Steven Adams and the Houston Rockets are on the right track, and that track has stopped at the NBA playoff station. You wrote in our newsletter that the Rockets will face the winner of the playing game between the Memphis Grizzlies and Golden State Warriors. Steven Adams, he is back in NBA playoffs, and we've been tracking this double big lineup that they've had with Alperen Sengun, so that's a funky little wrinkle to watch out for in the NBA playoffs. And there's also been this like idea of teams gone big again. Whether it's having a deal with someone like Nikola Jokic, like the best players kind of are the biggest players at the moment with Jokic and a few others around the league. But you've also got a paragraph in our newsletter that says that Cleveland Cavaliers, they've got Mobley and Allen as two big men. Oklahoma's got Holmgren and Hartenstein. So there's a few teams that have the double big situation. The Rockets are one of the best, though, with Steven Adams and Alperen Sengun, if not the best. Is that the main nugget that the listener should take away heading into this NBA playoffs, is the double big situation with Steven Adams and Alperen Sengun, or is there a different nugget that you want to highlight?
I think that probably is the main nugget because that's how Steven Adams is going to get his minutes. And yeah, like I said in the thing, it is maybe a little bit of trend setting there because that duo has been awesome, and they have just like consistently torched opponents, and in a way where I think a lot of the reaction now, even now when you're starting to see people actually recognize it and take notice of how good this double big lineup has been, a lot of it is about just how good they are at rebounding. And it's like, yeah, of course they're good at rebounding. You know, you've got two big men on the floor. Of course they're going to be good at rebounding. You got more size than the other team, generally speaking. And Steven Adams happens to be a legendary offensive rebounder, and Sengun in particular is really good at grabbing those defensive boards. So they work well in combination too. They both box out, but especially Steve-O leads the league in box outs per 36 minutes. If he'd played more significant minutes, he might have been leading in other factors as well. We've got to take the ratio ones into the equation here because of his lesser role, particularly in the first half of the season before they started using that double big stuff. So of course they're going to be good at rebounding when they're on the floor together. I expect like Hartenstein and Holmgren is good at rebounding as well. I expect Allen and Mobley are good at rebounding as well. And those, by the way, that's the top seed team in the East and the top seed team in the West. So it's not just that some other teams are using this. It's that the best teams seem to be leaning towards having the big, which is often how those trends work, right? It's like the best team, you come up with something good. If it's not good, no one cares. If it's good, then everyone copies you because you're successful with it. So I think maybe there's a little element of that where these things always go in cycles. So we're coming out of an era where big men were expected, like if you're going to stay on the court, you're going to have to be able to shoot. It's the only way you're going to last in this era of spacing. And then you got someone like Steven Adams going against the grain and showing that you can get spacing in a variety of ways, like just a good screen. That's spacing. That's all you need. Being an amazing offensive rebounder so that no one ever doubles up on the perimeter because they're too scared to leave you alone in case the three-point shot misses. That's also spacing in its own way. But I don't think the rebounding stuff is the only reason that this works. In fact, I think if it was the only reason, I don't think it would work. Just because you had a couple of good rebounders might still easily be torched by a team that can play quickly and play fast around you. But one of the interesting things about Adams and Sengun is that when they're on the floor together, Houston Rockets actually play faster. They get more possessions per game on average while those guys are on the floor than what their overall team average is. So they're quicker with the two. The cliche would be that they would be slower for having a couple of bigger, heftier fellas out there. They're not. They play faster. And one of the reasons they do that is partly because they get a lot of offensive rebounds, but also because those two are both good passers. And there's just like Adams is also ranking very highly for loose ball recoveries, and Sengun is a guy who can shoot from multiple levels, and he's very good in scoring in the post. And like they're both very skilled players in different ways, but they're both very skilled players for those positions. And I think that's the reason why the double big lineup works so well, is because of the skill of both of them, not just the size of them. The size, anyone could get to big guys out there on the floor, and then maybe it would work for some teams as well. But I think what makes this lineup so outstanding is that they're able to pass, they're able to shoot, they're able to, you know, create space for their wing players to knock down open threes and all this kind of stuff. Like they're a very skillful lineup as well, which I think is the secret weapon behind the rebounding.
We also had a lovely development with the New Zealand Breakers, the Breakers of Aotearoa, not the American Breakers, not the Indian Breakers, not the Next Star Breakers, but the New Zealand Breakers, who have actually factually signed a couple of Kiwis. Who knows how that goes? Because they have Taylor Britt, one of our favorite Kiwi basketballers from the Canterbury Rams, back-to-back NBL champion Canterbury Rams, who are currently second on the NBL ladder. He is now with the Breakers. They also have Rob Lowe returning to Auckland after a very good stint with Melbourne United, retired, then played a couple of years with Melbourne United. Now he is back in Auckland, and these signings come after they snared Reuben Te Rangi late last week, I believe. So the New Zealand Breakers
and Isaiah Liafa as well.
And Liafa. So that's 4 Kiwi basketballers right there signed to the Breakers who were all ignored by the previous Breakers regime. Fantastic signings that not only, like, they're all good basketballers. Like the prospect of Taylor Britt and Liafa playing as the guards together, as well as 2 young Kiwis on the roster, Kaya Isaac and Alex McNaught, that is fantastic. Having Rob Lowe, big man, shooting a couple threes, doing his thing, that's fantastic. Especially if Rob Lowe's playing alongside Sam Meninga, another big man from Aotearoa who's on the roster. What are your perspectives, your opinions on these 4 signings for the Breakers? And of course, if you follow the NicheCache, the newsletter, the website, the social medias, you'll be on top of any other signings that may come over the next couple of days, the next week or so. But those 4 signings in particular, what did you make of? What did you make of them?
Arguably, you could almost say 5 signings, because the other thing that the new owners have done is they've upgraded Carlin Davidson from a development player role into a full rostered role as well. So he's someone who was already with the team, but he's now on the team with a bigger role, similar of what we saw with Max Darling last season, went from a DP to a fully rostered player, and then actually surprisingly was he's pretty good last season. He definitely enjoyed his bigger role, particularly at the start of the season. So that does finish their local player spots. Like there's no more room to sign any more locals on full spots. There is that Carlin Davison DP spot that's been vacated now, so they might sign, well, I expect they will sign another development player. That's always the thing you do after you've signed everyone else, is move on there and look at how many good, like, teenagers or, you know, young players there are in the NBL right now. You might not be able to take your pick completely, because a lot of them have already aligned with American colleges where they're going to go that way instead. But you're going to have a pretty fair selection of up and coming players that you can find to fill out that last DP spot. I don't know if you're allowed more than 3 DPs. I don't think so. If you do, like, those guys are never going to play, because you get, especially when you've already got a next star on the roster, as they do, because Kareem Lopez will be back for another season. First next star to actually do 2 seasons, which seems like a positive development. You know, player actually staying for longer than 1 season rather than certain others that they had earlier on who left before the first season was even finished. They have kept Sean Bairstow, which is a little bit surprised about, because they didn't have to, and he didn't do a whole lot for them last season, but he will be the only Australian on the roster now, because they cut loose Mitch McCarron as well, who also didn't do much last season and kind of had, like, there's an important role that Mitch McCarron played in that squad, which is that he was sort of like wasn't much of a shooter, but he was a good passer, smart player, and a veteran leader. I thought it was very interesting when you look at the recent squads that the Breakers have had, which I did, just like scanning back at some of them. And often that kind of like all the good teams have someone like this, right? Like the veteran leader who maybe isn't going to play heaps of minutes, but is going to make everyone else better because they're just there to impart their wisdom, play a little bit here or there, and just, drive standards, all that good stuff that you expect from your leaders. It's pretty interesting that the previous Breakers kind of outsourced that role in the team to Australians. Like they had Mitch McCarron, they had old bloody Cam Glidden and guys like this. The new Breakers have brought back Reuben Te Rangi, so he's going to be that guy. I don't know if he'll play more than 15 minutes for the Breakers. He might, because he's probably going to be your backup for Kareem Lopez, and a young starting small forward is likely to need some protection at times in certain lineups. So he might well, but at the very least, Te Rangi is going to be that guy who is like the your veteran leader, but also in this case a Kiwi veteran leader, someone who has a history with the club. He's won a championship with the club. He might be the last player left from the last time they won a championship. I'd have to check that and see, but like he's someone who is aware not only of like the mana of New Zealand basketball, but because of course he is a regular captain of the Tall Blacks, and he's someone who maybe if you're looking at just pure stats and whatnot, you might wonder why he keeps getting selected for Tall Blacks. And then you hear people talk about him and you hear him talk about the sport. And it's pretty clear why he keeps getting selected. And you see him, see him leading the team out and stuff. Like, yeah, this is why he's that guy. And he's that guy for the Tall Blacks. He's going to be that guy for the Breakers, which made Mitch McCarron's role redundant. And so they've managed to squeeze out of that one. There is technically still the Taco Fall thing where they haven't released him yet, but I think it sounds like everyone expects that they're going to, which should mean a clean slate of imports. They'll bring in 3 more. I don't think Parker Jackson Cartwright will be back, but who knows? Maybe that's possible. But I expect them to sign a couple import guards. But yeah, that is their local crew sorted in terms of the main roster fellas, and they've cut loose a bunch of Australians. They've added Taylor Britt, they've added Isaiah Liafa returning to the team after a year away in Sydney. They've added Reuben Te Rangi returning to the team after many years away. Rob Lowe returning to the team. Carlin Davison's been upgraded. Max Starling's already there. Sam Meninga's already there. I'm not 100% convinced about the Meninga-Lowe combination. I sort of would have liked a big man duo that has a little bit more variety. They feel like a bit too similar in some ways. Although Meninga would have to up his 3-point range to maybe fulfill that similarity completely. But I was thinking about that a little bit more, and I was wondering, well, maybe you sign an import big who can play center or power forward, and then you can just like match them with those guys. I also wondered about the possibility of Meninga and Lowe on the court together at the same time. Meninga as your Alperen Sengun, Rob Lowe as your Steven Adams, maybe the other way around. I don't know, because actually Rob Lowe is the guy who has the better outside shooting, but who knows? They would, it would be their own unique combination, but potentially there's some double big things since that's now all the rage. Potentially you might be able to do something like that. So I'd say that got me back excited again. But I think mostly with the Rob Lowe thing, like it would be regardless of what the fit may be, I think this is a hilarious signing because Rob Lowe was treated worse than any other New Zealand player by the previous ownership. There was that whole thing where he was like, his wife, who was American and was living in New Zealand during COVID time, so away from all her family, heavily pregnant, she gave birth. He was stuck in Australia. Eventually he left because he's like, she apparently has a complicated birth and he needed to be there for her. She had no other structures. And the Breakers treated him like he was a traitor for leaving them in the middle of the season and told them he wouldn't be back this season. They shut him down, even though he didn't say that. Of course, they did bring him back before the end of the season, so it was all bluff and bluster, which is common for those for that era of Breakers. But nobody was treated worse than him. Not even Corey Webster, who got told he was the worst starting 2 guard in the league when he asked to leave that time. Like Rob Lowe was treated even worse than that by those Breakers, and he to the point where he retired rather than re-sign with them, and then went and played for a different team instead, which itself is a bit of a middle finger. Now it's another middle finger because he's returned to the Breakers as soon as the ownership changes. That's kind of hilarious, and it's yet another example of the new owners. They won't say it, but it feels like overtly doing the opposite of what the previous ownership did. Like, it's almost like, yeah, them doing a middle finger to the previous guys. Like, you did it this way, well, we'll do it this way. The opposite way. We're going to sign a bunch of Kiwis, and one of them is going to be Rob Lowe.
You did mention in the newsletter that it's unlikely that the boss man Ting, Hiram Harris, probably won't be joining the Breakers. And that's all right.
Less so now that Lowe's signed because there's no room. They've filled their local roster spots.
I do find it weird that you there's a limit on how many locals you can have.
Well, there's not really. There's a limit on the overall size, and there's a limit on imports, right? So you could, to be fair, they could sign Hiram Harris instead of an import. That's true. Yeah. I hadn't thought about that loophole, but of course you could. And why not?
Again, absorbing the bias, Hiram Harris is better than an import. Like, let's be honest. He's better than any import you can throw at me. I'm going to choose Hiram Harris. And Hiram Harris is part of the Wellington Saints, who are first in the NBL. They are 6-2. And they've played an extra game. So they're first, but you've also got Canterbury Rams, Taylor Britt, Max Darling, Kaya Isaac fame, as well as plenty more. Then you've got the Tauranga Phi and Franklin Bulls are also 5-2. Hiram Harris just casually third for average points per game for Wellington, third for average assists per game for Wellington, and their leading rebounder. So that's just Hiram Harris, typical areas, good line, good length, straight through to the wicketkeeper. And they've had the boost of Shea Ili coming back, handy player to bring back into a NBL team, a New Zealand NBL team. Do you have any observations about the Wellington Saints or any of the other teams who are 5-2? Canterbury Rams, Tauranga Phi, Franklin Bulls.
Well, the Wellington Saints are a funky one because they were the dominant force in this competition for a long time. And haven't really been so the last couple of years. Like, they've still been decent, but they've not been certainly not been winning championships, and they've not really been competing as much for those championships as they would have hoped to once upon a time, even just a few years ago. So yeah, I think there was definitely a statement of intent about them this season. Hiram Harris has been awesome throughout, but like, even because Shaylee's just turned up now after the NBL finals. He was kept fairly busy during all that. But up until like even then, a lot of teams will just wait for their players to arrive, rely on the youngsters. Like, you think of the situation at Hawke's Bay, for example, where they had a bunch of players from Melbourne, including their coach, who was an assistant coach for Melbourne United as well. They weren't available up until recently, but they just sweet as Jackson Ball can do what he does. We'll just take this time to let Jackson Ball and Campbell Scott and like Kobe Carter and whoever else have just bigger roles than they will otherwise get later on in the season. But we'll give them the spotlight at the start. Wellington went out and got Sean Bruce. It's when he got a top level Australian player to fill the gap until Shea Ili arrived. So they were not willing to make any concessions or sacrifices or cut any corners there. They're very clearly the fact they signed Shea Ili at all, who hasn't really played in the New Zealand NBL for a couple of years, usually spends his Aussie off seasons playing the NBL 1 stuff, the sort of the level below that in Australia, which is an off-season league. A lot of them do. He generally does that, or he just, I don't know, I'm sure he's taken a break on a couple of things. He is a guy who's had a few injuries. That was a statement signer in and of itself. And then also, I think the big one was bringing in Aaron Young as head coach, who was coaching, I think it was the Tuatara last year, wasn't it? And he is an assistant coach, Kiwi coach as well, although I think partly raised in America. But, well, he's back and forth. He's a dual national. He is also... I hope he's back for next season. I don't actually know. They'll tell you when the players sign, so-and-so on a 2-year contract, player option, second year, blah, blah, blah. They don't tell you that about the coaches. So I assume he's back next season as an assistant with the Perth Wildcats as well, who, if you remember, up until now. They have actually had a pretty solid core of Kiwi players who've been playing for Perth, but Ty Webster's now a free agent. Hiram Harris is a free agent. Dante Russo-Nance, who's having a spectacular season, big breakout year for him in the New Zealand stuff with Manawatu. He's supposedly moving up to a fully rostered spot, so that is nice. Perth will keep at least one of those guys around. Don't think they'll bring Ty Webster back. Maybe there's a chance of Hiram Harris going back, even though he hardly played towards the end of last season, so I kind of don't want him there. I want him to go to a team where they actually use him properly, but you never know. Like Bryce Cotton, I think, has left as well, so it puts Perth in a little bit of a rebuild mode, which maybe that clears up some space for Hiram Harris to get back to the role that he was playing the season before last. So who knows? But yeah, Aaron Young had we can assume, I think safely, a decent part to play in them bringing in a few extra Kiwis. Been a very good coach with the Tuatara last couple of years, and now seems to be doing excellent things with the Wellington Saints, getting them back up where they feel that they belong. And yeah, they were already winning games. Then Shayley turns up. Doesn't even play much off the bench in the first game, still gets 13 points and I think 10 assists. Plays a whole lot in the second game, scores 31 points, makes 4 out of 4 3-point shots. You know, still gets about 8 assists on top of that. That's like a James Harden stat line, that one. That's amazing stuff. And that's Shayley just getting up to speed. So yeah, the Wellington Saints, it seems like they're pretty good again. And it seems like I definitely don't want to count out. It seemed like, I think the Auckland Tuatara, they're not one of the 5-2 teams, are they? I think they dropped a few games early on while they were waiting for some of their guys to turn up. Is that right?
They are 5-3, so they've got the same number of wins, but they've played that extra game with an extra loss.
Yeah, well, I think they're trending very much upwards as well. Like Rob Lowe's been good for them, but also especially Davo Hickey, Australian player who they brought over, who was he's just coming off his breakthrough season after a few years of trying with the Illawarra Hawks, and he was so good in that championship run that he was the guy that Matthew Dellavedova got given the finals MVP, and he walked over and gave it to Davo Hickey. He was like, "Actually, you deserve it. First of all, my team lost the finals, so I don't really want it, and second of all, you were the man here." And he has played 4 games for Auckland, and he's got 3 triple doubles in those ones. So he's just like, his fingerprints are on everything. He's potentially, he might be the Australian Hiram Harris. I don't know, but a bigger scorer. He's fantastic. He's been awesome for them, and seems like a cool dude, like a fun player to watch as well. So, yeah, and of course the Canterbury Rams did have their streak snap, their winning streak on over the weekend. Lost to Franklin, but they still very clearly seem like a dominant team. So we might be in that situation where maybe the 3 biggest contenders are just the teams from the 3 big cities. The Canterbury team, the Wellington team, and the Auckland team. But who knows?
Davo Hickey is actually William Hickey.
Yeah, I don't know where Davo comes from, but they call him Davo.
His middle name's David, so he just becomes...
Okay, well, that's where it comes from.
He's obviously Davo. But I was like, is his first name actually Davo? How's he spelt that? And all I could find was William Hickey. So shout out to William Hickey, shout out to Davo Hickey, and shout out to your weekly mention of the Wellington Saints past dynasty. Like, you do it every week. I appreciate it because you got to remind folks, but I mean, we're here in the moment now, and it's the Canterbury Rams. The Canterbury Rams are the kings of the NBL. Because like, people listen to you and they might think Wellington Saints, they've won the last 5 championships, but
no, that's what I was saying is they used to win all the championships and they haven't been because they've been usurped by the Canterbury Rams.
Yeah, that's why
it's important to keep the hierarchy in place. The Rams are the reigning dynasty.
Because you reminded me some of the NRL discussion, like these teams have been good for the last few years, so that automatically makes them good this season. But yeah, shout out to the Wellington Saints. Yes, they do have a lot of historical mana in the NBL, one of the most, if not the most prestigious New Zealand NBL franchise, but we are currently in the Canterbury Rams era until it changes. Maybe it's going to change back into Wellington's favour. Maybe we get a bit of a Tauranga Fire, a bit of Franklin Bulls rising up the ranks as well, which would be good to see.